As I say, it's a great honor and privilege to be here with you, and I'd like to talk a little bit this morning about IFIP, but also later on we'll talk more about IoT specifically. They say it's an ill wind that doesn't blow some sort of good. We've had 2.5 years of very strange times, but it's been a means of developing new technologies, and we've seen some technologies come on in leaps and bounds in the last few years. Whatever way you came here today, you use software in some sense, you use technology in some way, whether it's a plane, a train, hailing a ride app, indeed even the scooters that we have now in many cities around the world, driving people crazy and causing accidents. Even those are based using GPS and using apps that you can locate them. I have a colleague who's obsessed with getting rid of traffic lights. He believes we can do this even without self-driving cars, because we can have cars communicate with each other using the sort of technology that we're talking about today. And in fact, I read a very interesting article a few months ago about an experiment in England where they put transponders into the cars and on traffic lights, so the traffic lights would send a signal to a car to say that the red light was coming up, and the car would slow down, and it avoided having to stop at a red light. This reduced the emissions by 2/3, which is fantastic, and that's something we're really need to be thinking about doing. And then, of course, the great exploration, the great challenge is to go to space. And back in the 1960s, John F. Kennedy set this challenge because it was a grand challenge. It was a big task, something that we needed so many people to get together, bring along so many technologies. And people forget that NASA spends more than half of its budget on monitoring the Earth and taking care of our environment. And indeed, people also don't realize that there is a law that requires NASA to use any technology it develops in a non-space exploration domain. So all the technologies that are developed for space have an application in something else, and typically that's on Earth. We've seen Industry 4.0 already reach us. Industry 5.0 is already upon us. We've seen the advance of technologies in all sorts of power generation, and of course in telecommunications, as we've already heard this morning, 5G and ultimately 6G, and all of these things will advance our telecommunications so dramatically. And unfortunately, in the last couple of years, we've also learned an awful lot about healthcare and health monitoring. And I will talk a bit later on in my second talk about space exploration. And of course, this is one of the great challenges, is putting devices, robots. We've put 7 robots on Mars over the years since 1997, and they've brought us all sorts of amazing information and amazing technology. This is the latest advance in space exploration. This is JWST, the James Webb Space Telescope. You've probably seen it started sending back pictures this week, although it was launched back in December. This is the actual telescope, minus the lenses and mirrors, but this is the actual telescope. It's not a mock-up, it's not a model, it's the real thing. And this is the team of people who built it, and that's me. See right there? But a lot of our technology is based on these simple devices that I see most of you have in your pockets or in front of you on the table. I'm told you can actually use these to make phone calls. Very strange. Why would anyone want to do that? Well, we can do so many more interesting things with it, of course. We see the basis of all sorts of transactions, financial transactions, purchasing, shopping, etc. And of course, this leaves us open to possibilities of cybercrime, which the minister knows all about, being an expert in this area. But the problem is that people can easily be fooled. So this is a hack into the Twitter account of Barack Obama, and several other people were hacked. And what it says is that if you send him $1,000 in Bitcoin, he'll send you back $2,000. Now, I think very few people were really foolish enough to believe that. People who did believe it probably wouldn't be able to send Bitcoin anyway, so they were probably not really at that much risk. But the point is that this was a hack into the Twitter account. This is not a fake post. This is not something somebody sent out there. It actually is done from Barack Obama's Twitter account. So somebody was able to get into it. And that leaves us all these opportunities. So we live in what I like to describe as a cyber-physical social system. Cyber because it's based on software, and the software is the enabler for all of the things that we're trying to do. Physical because it connects to the physical world, it connects information, collects information about us and about what we're doing, about where we're going, what we're buying, where we live. who our friends are, who we're talking to. And so that's the social aspect, that we give all this information about ourselves out to all sorts of people. The United Nations has set itself 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and I'm sure you're all familiar with them. They break down into 169 different actions. And IFIP, the International Federation for Information Processing, has a duty as part of UNESCO to exploit and try to reach all of these goals for the sustainable development of our planet. So each year, the UNCTAD, which is the United Nations Commission on Trade and Development, sets itself the SDG Pulse. So it sets a number of these goals that will be prime for that year. So here you can see in 2020, published in July, it set the goals of zero hunger, decent working conditions, diversity, advancing the goals, and strengthening institutions to do that. Strangely enough, in 2021, again in July, you would have thought that healthcare was going to become the big thing, but it wasn't. It set itself the same goals in 2021 as in 2022. And of course, we're trying to achieve all these goals by the end of 2030, so it's not that long away. So the Pulse this year, again, is the 7 goals that have been selected by UNCTAD. But number 3 is the one that isn't mentioned. And this is the one that's become very important to us over the last couple of years. So it's good health and well-being. And what they say is that it's health monitoring via emerging technologies, it's remote contact diagnosis and treatment, population and disease monitoring, preparing for disease outbreaks, identifying patient symptoms, following established treatment protocols, and performing remote diagnostics, helping to analyze trends, make projections about disease outbreaks, health service usage, and patient knowledge, attitudes, etc. Well, all of this is exactly what we've been doing using these simple technologies for the last 2.5 years. And they've become really, really important to us. So, unfortunately, some of this technology hasn't worked terribly well. This is a cartoon from the Times of London. Peter Brooks is a great cartoonist. And there's been a question. Ireland built a COVID tracker, and it was incredibly successful. Here you see a posting from the BBC. Why did the English one not work? Well, the Irish Times can tell you why. Because we have a very young population. About 23% of the population downloaded the app immediately and began to use it. And that's the important thing. Technology is all wonderful, but you have to use it, and you have to use it the appropriate way. Here you see the French tracking system didn't work at all because only about 1.5 million out of 65 million downloaded it. And most of those deleted it within 2 weeks. So the app was there, the technology was there, but nobody was actually using it. Compare that to Ireland, a country of just 5 million people, and 23% were using it the first day. That's amazing. So the uptake of technology is as important. And regulation, of course, is very important. But you have to be careful because regulation can actually stymie growth and development. So the Irish app is now the basis of an open source version. We're not saying that the Irish app is the best one by any means, but it was so popular and so successful, that's why other countries have taken it up. And these, of course, will be used in all sorts of ways to advance the Sustainable Development Goals. I have a short video, if you bear with me, that will just tell you a little bit about IFIP and what we do. I don't know if you can hear that. Apologies. Don't worry about it. Sorry, folks. Just wanted to let you know a little bit about what IFIP does. We were founded by UNESCO in 1960, so we're slightly late celebrating our 60th anniversary because of COVID. We deliberately postponed it. But there are 2 books that are available to download from our website. or indeed from the Springer website. One of these is Unimagined Futures, ICT Opportunities and Challenges, which talks about the benefits of all of these emerging technologies and how they can be applied and how they're going to benefit society as a whole. And then the second book is Advancing Research in ICT, and that is a more technical book about the work of our various technical committees and working groups. Both of these books are available to download for free. You can download either the entire book or individual chapters, and I do please encourage you to have a look at it and see and understand some of the things that we're doing and that some of the great work being done by various volunteers in our society. So thank you very much. I look forward to talking with you again later and talking a little bit more technically about IoT and the applications of IoT in space. So I hope you'll find that interesting.
Thank you very much, Professor Hinchey. Technology